Hello, good morning, Eva Franco.
Hi,
and good morning, everyone. I'm Emanuela Mazzonis. I have assisted Francesco Bonami in creating the Me Family project. And today we are here with Eva Franco Mattes, who I want to thank you, first of all, for being with us and for having accepted to participate to this online conversation that is part of our public program in the Me Family platform that has been launched at the end of October. And today we are at our fourth appointment. So before I start my questions, our conversation, I would like to give a brief introduction to the public about Eva Franco, who are a duo active since the early 90s in the art world. They have exhibited under a pseudonym that is still active, if I'm not wrong, 01001, etc.org. It's an internet domain whose mysterious identity fits perfectly an era when digital languages and the role of the web were just starting to enter the contemporary art scene. You are both fascinated by the evolution of the digital world and the way internet has changed the methods of social and political interaction between individuals, and also the effects that the web has had on artistic production during the last 30 years. So you always have used the web to reveal stories. You actually did it in a very interesting approach because you steal and copy data and images. You use also fake names, you change identities, and all the while adopting transparent strategies without hiding behind the web, always revealing what was your aim and your project. So now, considering the globalized society and this ever-changing society and generation, what difference do you see between the 19th and today? And how do you think was internet interpreted 30 years ago? And how much this interpretation has changed today, if you think the interpretation of the internet is really changed in the last 30 years?
Well, thank you, Manuela, and thank you to Francesco Bonami for organizing this great show. Thank you to Susan Cotter and all the team at Mudam. Well, the internet in the 90s was, of course, very different from what we have today. It changed so much that it's almost unrecognizable. In the beginning, the internet was decentralized and distributed. It was pretty much built and maintained by its users. So, for example, we had our own server in our bedroom, which hosted our works. So we owned a piece of the internet. And we could host and publish our artist friends' artworks, books, images, and songs. We were young, we were isolating, trying to make art, and we suddenly found ourselves in a global network of like-minded artists. Without any connections, without much resources, we could publish our works and gain visibility. One of the first works we did was called Live Sharing, and for 3 years, we openly share our home computer, making its content accessible on the internet. All our artworks, as well as private material, including like emails, texts, photos, bank statements, were freely available for viewing through our website. Consider that social media didn't exist at the time, and so personal data were not a currency yet. So it was a reflection of this first, more exciting, perhaps more utopian atmosphere around the internet and free software ethics. The internet we have today is quite different. It's very centralized, with a few small giants owning most of it. All our posts, photos, images are constantly being captured and archived indefinitely and analyzed for commercial or political purposes. As artists, we try, I think, to respond to these changes. We try to visualize these contradictions and to create works that embody them. So in the 90s, we were obsessed with visibility. Today, we're interested in quite the opposite: invisibility, withdrawal, and what we call the peripheries of the internet.
Thank you. Very interesting explanation. And I think it's very also linked to my second question, which is related to one of your recent projects, because as you just said, Eva, you use the net, if I can say, the dark net as your space to divulgate art. And now if I think about Time Out of Joint, that is an online exhibition that you recently curated, if I'm not wrong, for the Yerevan Biennial, that is actually taking place completely on the dark net, on the net. You describe this project as a remote location and periphery of the internet. So I would like to ask you a little bit more about this project, also in relation to what you said just now, that you are looking now for invisibility.
Yeah, Time Out of Joint is an exhibition, an online exhibition we curated for the Yerevan Biennale, taking place entirely on the darknet. We borrowed the title from a novel by Philip K. Dick about the nature of reality, with ordinary people experiencing the world unraveling around them.
Yes.
Actually, we had this idea of curating a show on the darknet for a long time. But when the pandemic started, it suddenly felt almost urgent. All art exhibitions worldwide were and still are, to a certain extent, installed as ghost exhibitions without being seen by visitors, perhaps never to be seen.
Yes.
We wanted an exhibition that took invisibility not as an unfortunate setback, as a flaw, but simply as a departure from more traditional formats, to bring the audience to a place they're not probably familiar with. So you could say if the surface internet is like, Art Basel or something, then the darknet would be your artist-run space in a dirty basement in Brooklyn, a place that's a bit harder to find, that works mainly on word of mouth, but where you might discover something unexpected. For the show, we commissioned new works by 6 artists: Joshua Citarella, Cluster Duck, David Horvis, Vladan Yoler, Amalia Ullman, and 2050 Plus Studio. The new works were added periodically over the duration of the show, and they were available to be seen, copied, or reused. Some were specifically created, actually, to be taken away, others to disappear after the show.
Well, the darknet reminds me very much of the 90s internet we were talking about before, the pre-social media internet. It's an uncharted territory. It's very different from the surface internet we're very familiar with. On the surface, time is fast. Everything is meant for immediate consumption and satisfaction. The darknet is also moving, but it operates at a slow speed. Pages load without rush. Think of slow as something positive, like slow food as opposed to fast food. It's anonymous, it's free of commercial constrictions, and it's full of possibilities. Craving for attention is what we do online anyway. On the darknet, you don't have any of the tools to quantify success. There are no likes, no shares, no cookies, no comments, no recommendations. There's only content. Someone might find it frustrating Like, how am I gonna know how much views has my video? But we actually think it's very liberating. It's almost Zen, in a tree falling in a forest kind of way. It forces the FOMO out of you. So Time Out of Joint is an exhibition to visit from home and without rush. It's an experiment in the attention economy. Maybe the fact that you have to wait for a minute to see a photo load, and that this photo will be erased afterwards. In the case of David Horowitz' work, will make you look longer. So is it possible to create a content that would put the viewer in a more contemplative mood online? That quiet, unhurried feeling you have when you go to a museum and you sit in a black box and you breathe.
Yes.
So is our attention proportional to buffering time?
Now I will jump 1 second to the other question. I will come back to the question about our project, Me Family Platform, because you just talked about the darknet. And one of my questions was about your definition of darknet. So we said that, I can say that in your work, in the fact that you are stealing data, putting data visible, you are raising questions that are very difficult to answer for the public, for normal person that are not very into, I think, the web and the darknet. So the questions are: who is controlling our data? How and where the data are recorded and monitored and stored, for how long, for example? What is this cloud that we think is protecting and storing our data, if they're really protecting? So you said in one interview and many times that the cloud is the real darknet. Now, Eva, you already told us about the darknet, about the fact that is only content. This is really interesting to me. I'm not very much informed about the darknet. I'm honest, because I'm not using it. I'm not specialized. But what you said about contemplative mode, slow speed, I think is very interesting to know more, to understand more about this. I don't know if now, Franco, you want to define us what the darknet is a little bit more. I know that Eva was already very exhaustive about this, but I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Sure. Well, the darknet is a network that runs parallel to the internet. So it's not, separate from it. It's just on a different layer.
Yes.
Kind of like, the 7.5 floor in Spike Jonze's movie, Being John Malkovich.
Okay.
You remember that movie?
Yes.
So to access this network, you need a special software, for example, the Tor browser. The darknet is just designed to let you communicate anonymously. Okay. Something that is no longer possible on the surface internet, in which our every move, including this conversation, is being monitored and archived. The darknet is largely presented in mainstream media as a marketplace, for drugs and weapons and pornography.
Yeah.
But it is also a platform that allowed free speech for activists in oppressive regimes. During the Arab Spring, for example, or the revelation of whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning. The fact that it's anonymous does not only free it from surveillance, but also from advertisement.
Yes.
Like what Eva was saying, there is no quantification economy, no data mining, no profiling, no cookies. There's a very interesting issue here regarding the terminology, because terms like dark and transparent are being used in a very misleading way, often on purpose. The internet we use every day is considered transparent. It's colorful and sparkling, and its interface is very familiar to us. It's comforting almost. As a matter of fact, we spend most of our time in the same few locations, Google, Facebook, Instagram, and Amazon. A handful of companies fill up our time online, influencing what we see and how we see it. But despite their rhetoric of openness, sharing and transparency, the way they actually work is incredibly obscure. It's mysterious. Contents are constantly monitored and filtered. Our personal data is traded between unknown parts to predict our future behaviors and possibly influence what we're going to buy or who we're going to vote for. For example, if I were to ask you, where are your photos? Where are your videos? Where exactly are they located and stored? You wouldn't know it. Yes, they are in the cloud.
The cloud, but yeah.
But where is this cloud? It's not lightly hovering over our heads. They're likely stored in a huge gray windowless warehouse somewhere in the Utah desert, heavily patrolled, a place we cannot visit. Although all of our photos and memories and arts are stored in it. So in a sense, the cloud is the real darknet.
Yes. Thank you. It was a very clear explanation, and we could keep talking about this, I think, for other 2 days, because it's a really interesting topic and very actual, and it's an issue that we are all facing, our generation, but everyone, young kids, old people at the moment are also using the internet, and anyway they're in contact with the darknet. So the whole world is completely involved in this. So maybe next time we will organize another conversation about only the darknet. Now I would like to continue our talk, and I would like to mention the work we selected for our Me Family platform, which is entitled Ricardo and Kat from 2018. And this is we can say, a contemporary portrait. You have realized gathering images from a personal phone you actually offered to buy through a real call on social media. So for $1,000, Ricardo, this person, this guy, he agreed to that his personal data could be transformed into a real art project. So through almost 3,000 images from 2004 to 2017, the life of this person unfolds progressively. Now, if I'm thinking about another project of yours that we actually included in the catalog of the exhibition Me Family, which is The Others from 2011, you used a different approach, I would say. You appropriate 10,000 images from people's personal computers, and you decided to then include these images in an exhibition space. I remember when you described us the way we should install it, you said possibly you have to install it in a wrong space, which was a very interesting way to describe the installation detail of the piece. And you did an operation that actually anticipated of many years the disclosure of Edward Snowden, and at the same time foretold the disappearance of the separation between public and private life. So in both works, you are raising questions that are related to exhibitionism, voyeurism, also the self that is shaped in the digital era. I would like to ask you a little bit more about these two projects and the difference that you see between the two.
That's an interesting question. Well, these two works probably reflect the changes we were talking about earlier. The Others was created 10 years ago. We exploited a small software error through which we found thousands of private photos of people who were sharing them, likely without knowing it. And we made a video slideshow with all the photos. We chose the slideshow in the beginning because it's the traditional, like vernacular way to show photos. And as you said, in the museum, the projection is always wrong. It's wrongly placed, for example, on a door. It's wrongly rotated. It's wrongly keystoned, as if my mom has set it up. But if you look at it, if you look at the photo, there is not much difference between these supposedly private photos and what we post on social media every day. You know, from the edgy to the banal. But they're not all photos of teenagers partying. There are also some very dramatic lives. For example, that of a woman who has been beaten, and she's documenting her bruises. And you cannot but start wondering what happened, who did it. Did somebody else ever see these photos other than me? So, you know, the work is addressing how ubiquitous these powerful technologies are becoming, and how, on the other hand, we don't fully understand how they work, how they can be, you know, at the same time empowering and rendering us more vulnerable. In a sense, how the internet, in a sense, like how on the internet you don't own yourself. It's like it's the internet that owns you.
Well, Riccardo Uncut is, in a way, a follow-up to the others. It was commissioned by the Whitney Museum in New York, and we could say it's the work based on our digital memories. Through an online open call, we found one person, Riccardo, who would sell his used phone, including all the photos and the videos contained therein, knowing that this material will become public. Like in the others, we created this slideshow of the phone contents that anyone can see, by the way, on the Museum's website for the Me Family exhibition right now. The final video is 1 hour and a half and covers 13 years of Riccardo's life. We kept all the photos without editing them in chronological order and without filtering or judging. We have manually changed the duration of each photo to emulate the pace at which we usually swipe through our phones. But the difference is very, very subtle, almost imperceptible. And we added this Jean Moreau song, Each Man Kills the Thing He Loves, looping in the background. While a number of these photos have likely made their way to the internet, the majority remain unseen, like most photographs nowadays. They accumulate on digital devices or remote cloud servers. They are ignored even by their author, to be forgotten and replaced by newer photos or newer devices.
Thank you. I think we can actually quite conclude, because unfortunately we are running out of time. But before, I would like just to ask you my last question, which is about a solo show you had the possibility to install at the moment, considering the difficult situation everywhere in the world. So you installed this solo show of yours at the Photo Museum in Winterthur in Switzerland, and is, if I'm not wrong, the first solo show of your work to be presented in a museum context, featuring a new commission that will become also part of the museum permanent collection. So I'm interested in knowing from your point of view, how important is for you to be exhibited in an institutional frame, respect to use the net as your art platform, art display?
Yes, so yes, we're lucky to install the show, which will open likely early March. So we're just waiting for it. We worked on a follow-up of Riccardo Uncut, so that's it's called Hannah Uncut, and that's the work that's been commissioned by the museum, and it's now part of their collection. There are a few new works in the show. Perhaps the most striking one, and you really need to go and see it if you want to experience it. It's this strange, bright yellow cable tray that crosses all the spaces in the museum, physically connecting all the works in the exhibition, making this infrastructure that is usually invisible very present. It's hung at very low waist level and accompanies the museum visitors, sometimes gently, sometimes closing the doors and forcing the viewer in different paths. I think Franco wants to show you some.
Oh, thank you. I can see it. I mean, I wish we could all have the opportunity to go and see the show in person.
Right. In a sense, this thing is a metaphor of how the internet is reprogramming our lives in an imperceptible way. We like to say that the cable tray reprograms the museum. So to go back to your question, parts of the works are exhibited in the museum, and parts of them will appear online, complementing each other. For example, there's a new sculpture called Afcat, which is this small taxidermy sculpture based on an online meme, for which we will publish a high-res photo under public domain on Wikimedia. There's a, oh my goodness, you're revealing too much. There's a new series of videos called The Bots, and they will also appear online on this art educational platform during the duration of the show. Okay. So to sum it up, it's not only an exhibition of images, it's also an exhibition about image circulation, emphasizing where the images come from. In our case, most of the inspiration comes from our wanderings online, and where they go, and especially who is looking at these images.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. I really wish we can have the opportunity some way, somehow, to see the exhibition. If it's going to open, I hope so, in March. For how long is going to stay? Do you know?
Until the end of May. It's a long run. So luckily.
Luckily, yes, luckily. So actually, I see the timing, and I think we run a little bit out of time, but it was very interesting. And I want to thank you both, Franco and Eva, for this conversation. And I also want to underline to the audience that is following us how interesting, again, is to explore your digital world, where I think we can all be able to learn remote elements of the net. We can discover, I think, in my opinion, is that through your work, we can discover the other side of the coin, revealing aspects of new technologies, world where sometimes we can feel lost, or I can feel lost, but other times we can find a guide towards an explored direction. So I think that thinking about contemporary art, I would say that the strength of art, of contemporary art, is to be inclusive of all kind of production, not to being exclusive. And I think that in your work, we can find this inclusion. So I would like to invite the public who is following us to set, in a way, their minds to be open to the net through the immersion in your projects, in your work, with another approach, an approach of discovery and of inclusion. So I wish to everyone to start this exploration, especially with the work that is in our platform, so Riccardo and Kat, and of course with all your other projects that people can find in the net. So thank you very much. And I really wish you good luck for the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eva and Franco. Thank you.
Manuela.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.